What do you do, family? We back again with some unique looks at the fifth house. Fifth house can definitely represent expressions, pulsations, and passions. I often think about someone gets mad, energized, passionate. Like you can see them, their skin turning red or skin turning orange. And this is also a form of expression about how it looks. Leo sextiles Libra, so the appearance and how it come across can be very obvious about how someone is expressing themselves. I believe the fifth house represents interactions. As you know, it's a fire house, so it's always going to harmonize with air houses. The third house in Gemini, the seventh house in Libra, and it's always going to be on the axis of Aquarius and 11th house. I always say that the fifth house is an extension of the fourth, and I like to say the fifth house is the expression of the soul. Your soul is inside you. However you feel, you can definitely express that in different variety of ways. Fifth house can definitely represent vitality and aliveness. If someone's in a coma, they're alive, but they're not expressing it. So the fifth house can be you playing, talking, expression, the obvious things that people know that you're alive. Fifth house can represent recreation, pleasure, enjoyment. But again, fifth house is very light-hearted interactions and high energy. So that's where you get recreation, pleasures, and enjoyment. Things that like the enjoyable things of life. The fifth house is a very, very enjoyable house. It's the things that we love about life. Even that quote, "love about life," can come out of the fifth house. An interesting thing that I thought about is the Phi and the Fibonacci sequence. The way I look at this is every form in nature has a spiraling energy signature, and they equate this with the Fibonacci sequence. I think this is tied with the fifth house just because it's a form and expression. Everything does have its genetic makeup, atoms, DNA, but how we see it expressed in most forms in nature expressed is the Fibonacci sequence. The fifth house can definitely represent the inner child, that youthful vitality that's always going to be within inside you. It just depends on if you let it die or not. You can see somebody that's 90 years old that never lost their inner child, but inner child is just another word for youthfulness, and youthfulness doesn't have the age. It's an energy signature. I also believe that self-awareness comes out of fifth house. In the fourth house, I said that the fourth house represents self-reflection, and I believe that out of self-reflection comes self-awareness. Just for an example, if something happens to you, you may go home and self-reflect on it. Out of that self-reflection, you may become aware about an aspect of yourself that you may not have noticed before. Also, Taurus and Scorpio square the fifth house, or Leo energy. And like I said in the first house, earth and water will always square fire, but it doesn't have to be bad. It's just like tribulations. So whereas Taurus can very like slow Leo down through tribulation, because Taurus is the 10th house of Leo. So through trial and tribulation, Leo may gain a lot of wealth, or they may gain a lot of wisdom on value about themselves, or whatever the case may be. And when it comes to Scorpio in the 8th house, through dark times and through a lot of negative energy, your light may become bigger or shine brighter. That's where self-awareness, because you think about it, Scorpio is Leo's 4th house. So through self-reflection in dark times, once you go to Sagittarius, that's may have high optimism about yourself and a lot of resilience. Another thing I think of is if Leo in 5th house is on the axis of Aquarius in 11th house, I believe that 11th house represents humanity. And I believe that, sometimes you'll hear people say that humans were made to share and commune and, be in relations and communications with others. And I believe this fits well because Leo in 5th house is the self and the self-actualization and the self-awareness. So through that, you can share that with others. Because the underrated thing about Leo is the fixed nature of Leo is the Sagittarius decan. So an underrated thing about Leo is the wisdom that they carry. So Leos can be very underrated teachers and wisdom seekers and wisdom tellers and storytellers. Obviously, this is the sun is home at Leo because both things match up. The sun is vibrant, big, bright, gives vitality to others. And another thing is, being on the axis of the 11th house, a lot of Leos are very freedom oriented. Like I always think of freedom when I think of like a lion or the sun. There's not really a lot of things. Of course, they have their tribulations like everything else in life, but a big thing with 5th house and Leo energy is freedom. Think of the inner child. Like the reason we even call it the inner child is because it's a free and youthful energy. Another thing astrologers say is that Neptune is exalted in Leo. I think this is interesting because if you think of the surface level thing as Leo is an actor and is a performer on a stage, the stage itself can be Pisces or Neptune energy. I'm going to do a video on this about how certain energies that may not seem connected on the surface hold a lot of weight, behind the scenes. And I'm going to do a video on that of Leo and Pisces and how similar and a lot of energy is shared between them. Thank you all for listening. The 5th house is a very, very overlooked and underrated energy. But thanks for listening. I'll see y'all on the 6th.